Jackson here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Yo, what's happening, Rush Nation? It is Murf here. It is, I can't believe it, the Week 10 Waiver Wire show. We did it. We're in double digits. This season is flying by. Before you know it, the season is going to be over. We're over halfway now into the NFL season. We will be after tonight. Regular season for the fantasy football is literally just 5 weeks. It's 5 more games in most conventional leagues. Some other leagues might have different setups. This is it now. Like, we're literally at the stage where it's make or break. We don't have much room for error unless you're 9-0 or 8-1 or 7-2. Then you have a bit more. But if you are 4 wins, 5 wins, your margin for error is pretty thin. So we're going to start to see the playoff picture, both in the NFL and also fantasy playoffs, really turn up a notch in the next week or two. So let's hope this podcast will be a massive help to you. I'm going to start off first of all by naming our sponsors, and also to thank manscaped.com for sponsoring this podcast. They do have the amazing Lawnmower 4.0 with its skin safe technology, which means you don't get those cuts in those awkward areas. And I've talked about this for a while, but it's a fantastic bit of kit in terms of what it comes in, the box and the presentation, but just in terms of the technology of it. I use mine. I'm one of over 2 million people worldwide who uses the Manscaped trimmer, and I wouldn't be without it. That's certainly for sure. But they also do some great products as well that I've certainly been enjoying using. I'm really a big fan of the body wash. It comes like a little spray pump and smell really good. People who have seen me using, my wife in particular, has commented how nice I smell when I use that. But then also, I'm a big fan of the anti-chafing ball deodorant. It is an excellent product, and I've definitely seen a huge difference in using that as well. They also have a foot deodorizer if you're out running, just to stop the sweating of your feet as well. So lots of really, really good products, and you can take advantage of all these products and more at manscaped.com with the code 5Yard, and you get 20% off plus free shipping. And that's the code 5Yard for 20% off plus free shipping. In terms of the free roll contest as well, just have to say thank you to everyone for embracing those. It's great to see the teams in there. We had over 1,200 entries into that this week, which is just phenomenal. We're looking forward to doing something again this week with fan teams, so do check that out. Check the DFS show out on Thursday. We're really looking forward to giving you another contest to enter, and all the details on that will be available on Thursday's show. But as I mentioned, you've come to hear about the waiver wire, so let's give you all the necessary information here. I'm going to start off first of all at the quarterback position, and I'm going to talk about Teddy Bridgewater. Now, I know if you listen to the live show, which is on it's on YouTube, it's on Twitter. We haven't released it as a podcast yet. It will be going out as part of our episode 500 special. But if you had if you're able to listen to that already, you would have heard me talk not too kindly about Pat Shurmur or the Broncos offense, but they did a great number on the Dallas Cowboys. I'd like to take some credit for that because someone must have listened and told Pat Shurmur, but clearly maybe not the case. But as a result, the one thing you've got to know about Teddy Bridgewater is he's actually the quarterback 15 on the season so far after a great game yesterday. He's got the second easiest fantasy schedule coming in for the regular season. That's until week 14. And he has the Eagles this week, so it's a really, really good matchup for him. He's 24.7% owned, so he's worth a couple of fab dollars on there to make sure you acquire him. If you want to go a different direction, then Ben Roethlisberger is another direction you can go. He is 17% owned. He has Detroit, which is easily the easiest game on the schedule right now. Now, I don't normally advocate picking up Big Ben off the waiver wire, but this is as easy a game as you're going to get in the NFL. The Lions are averaging 1 sack in a game in the last 3 games. They're third last in sacks this season. They're fourth last in pressure. They're sixth in air yards allowed. And it should be pretty routine, this game, for Ben Roethlisberger and company. So I expect them to put up some reasonable points against the Lions next week. So definitely worth an ad for a 1 week stream. That's for sure. Moving on to running back, and I'm going to talk about Ramondre Stevenson. He's kind of been up and down like a yo-yo, with massive hype before the season. It's a week 1 healthy scratch, but he actually led the Patriots running backs in rushing yards and receiving yards yesterday. He's really become that true all 3 down back now. And Damien Harris has got a slight injury, and he does struggle to stay healthy, Damien Harris. So it could be Stevenson's time to shine. And the Patriots are very, very poor in the red zone. You'll hear me talk about this on the flagship show with Dan coming up after this. And as a result, they will run the ball down there. So if Harris does miss time, Stevenson will get work. So he's definitely worth a stash play anyway. But in terms of if Harris is out, he'll have immediate upside in week 10. But I do think towards the fantasy playoffs, Stevenson is going to be a guy you want to own on your roster. That's for sure. Another short-term option is Benjamin. He's 0.1% owned. He will be available in your league. I can almost guarantee it, unless you're in one of those really super deep leagues. And he saw some really decent workload when he came in on Sunday, and also scored a touchdown, which is something that will annoy Chase Edmonds. Now, Chase Edmonds is hurt. Benjamin is the next man up. We already got, I think it was like 48, 49 yards on Sunday. And if you've got Murray and you've got Hopkins out, or one of them out, they might choose to run the ball more and get some health back to their offense, especially there with the wide receivers. So I definitely see them running the ball more. And if Edmonds is out and they don't want to rush him back, then Benjamin will see a nice workload in the interim. So well worth an ad there. Moving on to wide receivers, and one of the best wide receivers last week was Elijah Moore. He's 15.3% owned. Is Buffalo in week 10. He really came alive under Josh Johnson and Mike White, and you really must add him this week. He's definitely one of the best options out there to add, worth a priority ad, that's for sure. And also, it looks like Mike White should get the start this week, so I really think that we'll see more work going Elijah Moore's way as a result. I really like these Jets QBs coming off the bench and just playing for their lives. I think they're making it fun. They're making the games fun, but they're making the receivers relevant. So Elijah Moore is definitely an ad for me this week. Other one in there is Russell Gage. He's 16.3% owned. He has Dallas in week 10, so it should be a game where Atlanta will be needing to throw the ball a lot more. And don't let these random touchdowns to Zacchaeus fool you in the box score. Gage is the alpha wide receiver, with the exception of Patterson, who is sort of playing out wide in this hybrid running back wide receiver role. And I know Pitts is ahead of him for reads, but he operates in that main space, and Matt Ryan will feel comfortable throwing the ball into. He got 8 targets yesterday, and against Dallas, I expect him to get even more than that. So definitely something I would be working on there for sure. Now moving on to the tight ends, and Dan Arnold is the first guy up this week. Now he went 4 for 60 against the Bills in what was a pretty dire game, but Dan Arnold is definitely a guy worth owning. For me, probably the best guy on offense for the Jaguars this week, and I think he's going to hold those sort of 4 to 65 for 65 sort of numbers every week. But he's also got those touchdowns in him, and don't forget they traded for him. So I really like Dan Arnold this week against the Colts. Especially against these tight games and games against better teams, they will need to use the tight ends to really be efficient. The other option at tight end is Mo Alley-Cox, 12.1% owned. He has the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 10. And I don't understand why his ownership went down by 5% last week, but he is someone I would be definitely considering. I just think outside of these two tight ends, I don't really want anyone that's under 30% owned. They're all pretty low ceiling. Not really going to get many looks at touchdowns. You might get the odd random week, but these are the two tight ends on the waiver wire I want to be targeting. By the way, if we're talking fab, again, I talk about quarterback, really only 1-2% of fab. I wouldn't ever really spend more than them because there's so many that can put up points. I like Stevenson this week. I think he's worth up to 10% of your fab, just because I think he's a stash play for the rest of the season. Benjamin's a really short-term fix. I wouldn't be spending more than sort of 5% of your fab unless you're absolutely desperate. I think Moore is worth somewhere between 5 and 10% of your fab because I think he's starting to come alive. I think Gage is probably only worth about 5% of your fab. Max wouldn't be spending more than that. Tight ends definitely don't need to spend more than 5% on each of them as well. Moving on to Badgley, 12.4% owned. He has the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 10 as well. And again, he put up 9 points last week, but 6 of them were extra points because of all the touchdowns scored. I do think he'll get more field goal opportunities against the Jags, who put up a really good defensive performance against the Bills in a 9-6 win. So I do expect him to take advantage and maybe stop a drive or two, which will cause Badgley to score some field goals, which is what we desperately want. And then lastly, for the DST, I've got the Tennessee Titans. And why wouldn't you play the Tennessee Titans? They've been a really good defense for the last couple of weeks with turnovers, with picks, they're forcing the ball, getting those turnovers. And now they've got the New Orleans Saints who are really struggling on offense with backup quarterbacks after backup quarterbacks playing. I'm quite happy to dial the Titans up over the next couple of weeks, actually, because their defense is really making a lot of plays in a tough spot. So really like them this week as my streaming option. As for that, if you're looking for players that are potentially over sort of 30% owned that might be available in your leagues, Naheem Hines is 42.9% owned according to ESPN leagues. He's someone well worth a trickle ad. I do think he puts up relevant points. He got 20 points this week. He is going to get those sort of relevant games. JD McKissick is 52.6% points. Percent owned. Alex Collins is coming off the bye, so a lot of people dropped in because of the bye, but he is 38% owned because there's all this uncertainty when it comes to Chris Carson, so one to really watch out for. Alexander Mattison, 35.7% owned. You're kind of looking at that as a handcuff play, but one I definitely like. He's going to be an elite running back if Dalvin Cook goes down, so definitely well worth an ad there. And Sony Michel's always going to get that sort of workload if Henderson goes down. He's 26.2% owned, and he is still available out there in a lot of leagues. So there's some running backs I'd be targeting. I think for me, if I see one of these players be willing to push in quite a bit of fab, especially if I'm seeing some of those players I mentioned first of all on that list, they would be the ones that sort of really be keen to targeting. And getting playing like Naheem Hines potentially is someone I would be quite willing to spend sort of 10% of fab on. I know he's not an elite player. I know Jonathan Taylor's going to get all the work, but I definitely think he's well worth an option here. I also think Alex Collins, again, just keep an eye on the status of Chris Carson. This neck injury, we keep hearing about plans to resume practice and return to the field, but we just don't know. He's got a number of hurdles to clear before he gets there. So, speculative ad on Collins, but you never know. It might be a weird one that pays off for you. Mattison, again, he's well worth a bench stash at this stage of getting into this handcuff season. If a player goes down, you don't want to be bidding on the open market trying to get them. You want to make sure they're on your rosters. And Mattison definitely, for me, looks like the pick of the bunch that are under-owned right now that I would want to be targeting. Wide receivers potentially over 30% owned that are well worth a target if you can get them. I would say right now, Michael Gallup, he's 49.6% owned. He's not come back yet off IR. We expect him to come back. But any piece of the Dallas offense that's available, you definitely want to be adding that. Brandon Ayuk, 45.5% owned. He's starting to get out of the Shanahan doghouse. He's definitely well worth a few dollars to get added at this stage to your roster. Van Jefferson, 43% owned. These are the sorts of guys that can have those weeks and really pay off for you. And just scrolling down to some others in this list, and a lot of people wanting to add Brian Edwards this week, and I think he was added 19.3% of ESPN leagues. That didn't work out for people, but I do think going forward that might be a slightly better play, especially the rest of the regular season. But in the fantasy playoffs, it's definitely not a good play for you because he's got a terrible schedule going forward. As for tight end help, if there was any, Logan Thomas is coming back off IR, 47.3% owned. So I would be picking him up wherever he is free. That's for sure. That's probably the only other tight end, unless you see someone who's dropped Dawson Knox, then definitely go ahead and add him. But that will do it for the Waiver Wire podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. I will see you on the other side in about half an hour's time or so with Dan. We're going to break down week 9 There's lots of information in this podcast. If you're, trying to make your playoffs, this is a podcast that you'll want to listen to. And we're going to change the format slightly. Second half of the podcast is really going to focus on some things that I think are really going to help people make their playoffs. So definitely tune in. There's going to be a lot of value in there for you. So I look forward to presenting that. Bring your questions. We'll try and get those off and covered during the podcast as well. So see you all then in about half an hour's time. But until then, as always, Rush Nation, don't forget,